Welcome, everyone. This is our final growth session. So the last time we'll be together online as a group to move through a full agenda. So today's focus, as you know, is all about managing conflict. We know that when we have a group of humans together, conflict is inevitable. And so your ability to identify the challenges and be able to have the confidence and the skills to be able to manage that is crucial. So we are going to have an agenda filled with a little bit of lecture and learning from fantastic content, Crucial Conversations. This has been a best-selling book for well over 10 years and something that we highly recommend. We've mentioned it a few times throughout the semester. That if you don't have that book on your library, it's $20 or $25, and it is well worth it. I still keep my summary cards by my desk and use it all the time. So we're going to give you a taste of Crucial Conversations content. Christy and I are going to kick things off with a little bit about getting unstuck and mastering your stories. And that will take us through 2 o'clock. And at that point, you'll get a chance to hopefully get outside and breathe some fresh air, and then come back 15 minutes later for us to get back into the reality of what this looks like to manage conflict as a CIO. And so we've invited in the Chief Information Officer from SUNY System Administration. I am really excited to meet him. This will be my first time actually interacting with him. And so excited to learn about his experience with this, and I have a few questions, and I encourage you to think about questions that you have as well. So we'll want to keep it interactive as always. So he will be with us after the break, and then at 3 o'clock, we'll put you into your small group discussions with your mentor, and we'll want you to talk about your style under stress. That was some advanced work we gave you. It shouldn't have taken very long, but if you clicked that link, it was free to figure out if you go more to fight or flight or where your style is when you're under stress. So we'll talk a little bit about Crucial Conversations, your style, your comfortability with handling uncomfortable conversations, and maybe identify where you are stuck. So a conversation that you should be having or that you've tried to have and hasn't gone well. So what's holding you back from having it? And at 3:45, we'll welcome everybody back to this large Zoom room, and we'll have our mentors involved and you involved, and we'll work through some case studies. So every group will have their own case study, so a different challenge about conflict, and then we'll learn from each other how you navigated all these tricky situations. We'll also reserve 10 minutes at the end for one of our applied learning projects to be presented to us. So we have, I'm looking to see if I do see him logged in. So welcome to Ethan from RPI. He's going to be presenting his project. So he has a conflict for next week, but most of you will be with us in Syracuse. We will share a little bit more about logistics about the capstone and address any questions that you might have about that. But we are looking forward to traveling out on Wednesday and getting started at 9:30 on Thursday. And we'll be together at the Metro Center in downtown Syracuse for the presentations. We've got our largest group yet, so we really had to stretch. And you'll see me with my laminated signs with the 1-minute warning and the time's up, because we'll have a very strict time limit of 10 minutes. So more to come, and you'll definitely have space to ask questions about the capstone. Any highlights or housekeeping that is important to include here, Christy?
I think you captured it all. Great job.
Yeah, okay.
Carolyn, I didn't get a link to what you were referring to. Can you send that again when you get a chance?
Oh, the style under stress?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Let me put it in the chat. I think I have the document open.
Thank you.
Sure. This is what happens when I print things and I don't have it digitally available. But yes, I will get that to you.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay. Let's see here. So let me share my screen. Can you see Crucial Conversations? Okay, okay.
Yes.
So I've got two monitors. I always want to make sure it's on the right one. Okay. So just show of Zoom hands, have you ever taken the Crucial Conversations training, read the book, anything outside of what we've already sort of touched on in this CIO Academy? I see Lisa's hand up. Good. Oh, good. A few. All right. Christy and I took this training together. I don't know how many years ago now, 6 years ago, I think. And so we are both well versed in the 9 chapters. You see all of the chapters from the book here. SUNY has negotiated a price too for the on-demand course. So if this, what we talk about today, interests you and you want to dig deeper, reach out to me or search the CPD website for access to that on-demand course. But we're going to touch on getting unstuck, the first chapter, and helping you master your stories just a little bit. So we've got some video and some breakout groups and things to keep this interactive. So really, finding where you are in terms of what conversation you need to be having. Maybe you've tried to have a conversation, we'll say with a spouse or with a child, a family member, where it's just on repeat and you're stuck there. Or it could be that you are avoiding it, that you know that it has to happen, but you're just not ready to get unstuck. It's too scary, or you don't think that you or the other person are going to be able to have that dialogue in a productive way. So the first chapter is all about finding where you are to identify where you're stuck. So we're going to open this with putting you into some breakout rooms, a paired random breakout. And I want you to both take 2 minutes to discuss, how did you get your way as a child? Christy is our IT support, so hopefully we can do that.
Hey, Carolyn, you didn't give me co-host, so I can't do
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
There you go.
How many people do we have? 23, so we're gonna need. How long do you want them to have?
So 4 minutes, 2 minutes each.
Okay. Okay, here we go. One room had 3, just so you know, Carolyn.
Oh, okay. But we can just give them maybe 2 more minutes. Is that okay?
I have a problem with my audio. Would it be possible to, I had two links connected. Would it be possible to take my other link and dump it into the same?
Yep, let me see. Let me
I'm at room 6 with the other one.
Yeah, it's not giving me, why is it not giving me options? That is not giving me, oh, there we go. There we go. Room 6, room 6. Try that, Robert.
Okay.
You got to join on that one as well.
How many more weeks till you go to ATD?
I leave on the 16th.
Wow, 14 days, 2 weeks.
And I leave on Sunday for Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
So it's gonna be a busy month. Busy,
Yeah,
busy,
well.
busy. No, we got to stop recording.
We're going to resume the recording, and before I share my screen and lose my video, I'm just going to ask you all to share some from your paired discussions. So what are the stories you're hearing, and any examples would be welcome.
One thing that we discussed is, we didn't start with that, but we said, with the conclusion we came to is this idea of fear of the unknown. You know, most of us don't like change, and when the change happens, especially those who have, I have colleagues who have been working here for a long time, and and then when we decided to change a process that was very, very manual to semi-automated, they thought they were going to lose their job because they spent a lot of time manually entering data. And I'm like, no, there are so many other things that you could do, that you have the expertise, and we need your expertise in those areas. Data entry is something that, you should try to avoid if you can, so that you can do other things that are much more, intelligence based, where you can use skill. But it's difficult to convey that message, at least I'm not big. I can get better at it for sure.
Thanks for sharing that, Jolly.
Sure.
What are the most common stories you're hearing? Villain, victim, or helpless? We'll take one more response and then we'll advance, because I want to make sure that we give you the questions that break away from these stories. Oh, Harry's got his hand up. Thank you.
Sure. So the one that's most prevalent is certainly helpless, and I think that there was a lot of conversations about things being, political decisions that have already been made, and that's kind of laid out to us that we have this already made decision that we don't really have the ability to provide feedback and insight and change in direction. We just have this information that we then have the choice of determining how do we want to handle that, because we could handle that in a wide variety of ways, but basically, best case scenario, you're able to provide feedback, but when a decision is made, you kind of need to embrace that decision and make the best of it and go forward with it. But the helpless aspect is certainly.
Thank you. I mean, I think we probably see all of the stories at one point or another. But again, I want to give you some skills to be able to change the game here a little bit. So we looked at the path to action. If you're following through the full curriculum, you do a lot more to separate facts and stories. We've talked about what the 3 clever stories are. We want to break away from this, though. And so that means that we have to humanize the other person a little bit more. We've got to assess our own role in this and really turn ourselves, into more empowered conversationalists and not helpless. So we can do this by asking ourselves a couple of reflective questions. If you want to address those victim stories, you could ask yourself, what am I pretending not to notice about my role in the problem? So a really good question to just sort of sit with, if that's a common thing, you feel like you're the victim in this. Turning other people who maybe we had some choice names for them at our Crucial Conversations training, like what was one of the names?
Negative Nancy.
Negative Nancy. All right. So we want to turn negative Nancy into, something a little more positive. So we could ask ourselves, why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person do this? So we really do want to humanize the other person and see them, for showing up and having intentions to do a good job just like you. And the question, so there could be, we're not naive that there are some people who have negative intentions. But what if we're dealing with somebody who's not reasonable or rational? We do want to assume the best in others, but we've got to identify if there's a problem, and we won't walk away from that problem. So we start with a positive assumption. We want to give them that benefit of the doubt, and it also helps us to keep our emotions in check. So here are, we've got one more reflective question that we could ask ourselves if we find, Harry said we've got a lot of helpless response stories in our culture. So what should I do right now to move toward what I really want? There is something that you can do, right? Like a sense of agency or some power that you might have in a situation. It might not be everything you want, but you can try to move away from that helpless story and situation by asking yourself, what should I do right now to move toward what I really want? So just a couple of skills, reflection, and we do have, I think there may be 2 more videos left. Let's see. So here's the rest of the story. You saw the setup, and now we're going to watch this scenario play out.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I think I contributed to our predicament. I mean, I certainly wasn't very tactful when I pointed out the problems with Bill's plan. And from that moment on, conversation kind of went downhill.
Carolyn, we
Well,
only see you. We don't see the video.
Oh, thank you. I was doing all those slides without you seeing them. Oh, goodness. Sorry about that. Can you see the video? I'm going to start it over.
We see just the SUNY logo.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I think I contributed. I mean, I certainly wasn't very tactful when I pointed out the problems with Bill's plan. And from that moment on, now that I think about it, I think I contributed to our predicament. I mean, I certainly wasn't very tactful when I pointed out the problems with Bill's plan. And from that moment on, the conversation kind of went downhill.
Well, as much as I have talked about Bill being corporate evil incarnate, he did take the time to describe how difficult it was to make the decision. I guess we're all facing some pretty tough trade-offs.
It's also possible that we aren't the best team to do all the work, and yet I didn't speak up when I had the chance. Like you said, Larry's team is more experienced here. We could probably go and talk with Larry and Bill and share that concern. It might make a difference. Or maybe we could share the workload and cut down the amount of overtime we need to put in.
Okay, so you saw those reflective questions in action there with the last video. This is a sort of summary slide about the skills that you saw in Master Our Stories. As a quick summary, we separated the facts from the stories. Then we watched out, tried to find if there were some clever stories sticking in there that we could start to reflect a little bit more and humanize the other person. And so the third skill is telling yourself the rest of the story. What are you pretending not to notice? Why would a reasonable, rational person not do something like this? And what should I do right now to move toward what you really want? So these are steps to help you get unstuck and master your stories. This was just a snippet of what Christy and I participated in when we did the in-person workshop for Crucial Conversations. And I know that experience was helpful to both of us. And Christy, if you would like to share some of your takeaways from that, that would be fantastic.
I was muted. So as we continue discussing Master My Stories, that was the biggest takeaway that I had from the entire training. Because when we did this we were put into groups, and we discussed in our groups the different types of people that we found most difficult. So we've got negative Nancy, we've got backstabbing Bob. There's a many different names that you can come up with. And what we were taught was, instead of focusing on the person, we need to describe the things that this person did, and not put it on the person itself. So by us putting their name to this, that makes it personal. So what our instructor then did was, she took all of the group names and the traits and wrote them all on the whiteboard. And then we went through each trait one by one, determining if that was a fact or if it was just our opinion of them or story. In doing that, it was just so powerful, because by the end, they were all our opinion or our story, and it outweighed any facts that we tried to come up with. They always were actually stories. So it was really, truly eye-opening. You know, we see or hear, we tell ourselves a story, it generates a feeling, and then we act. And anybody that has children, especially teenage children, you tell yourself stories all the time. Why they were late, why they didn't pick up their room, why they didn't do what you asked. It's all stories. Do we ever stop to truly ask them why? No, because we're too busy. So we're our own worst enemy. Our negative story escalates our emotions, and then we act out worst when it matters most, unfortunately.
Thank you, Christy. And so I want to open it up. We've got a couple minutes left. If there's anything that's sticking with you that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear.
I'll just share that I've taken the class. It's been a long time, and I do think it's always good to revisit this. Like, they're always good reminders. So like, I do like having the slides and you know, watching the videos again. It was nice, even though I've seen it before.
Anybody gonna go home tonight and try Crucial Conversation? Oh, Grace has got her hand up. Good luck with that.
I have a 13-year-old, almost 14, and I need to have some crucial conversations.
Good.
Today has been Crucial Conversation Day from 8 a.m. until 1:58 p.m.
Yeah.
Well, with the exception of this group, we're talking about it. So it's been a day.
Yeah.
And I bet, Garrett, they weren't all planned crucial conversations, right?
Oh no, the president called me and had her crucial conversation with me, and then we met, and then there was coffee, and then we worked it out, and we met with some other people, and it's continuing. So, but they're not always planned either, right? So you have to stand fast and be ready.
Yeah. So I think it's important that you leverage the model in situations where it is planned, so that you can practice for the unplanned, and you can get your emotions under control in scenarios where it's unplanned, because it hits you off guard.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Well, I'm going to pause the recording and encourage you to step away from your. All right, welcome back, everyone. You want to put your webcams back on. Hopefully you got some of the fresh air that we're all enjoying here, and you're ready to continue with the rest of our program today. So we are going to stick with the topic of managing conflicts, and you've learned a little bit about what Crucial Conversations has to offer to help you get through some of these difficult conversations. Now we want to shed a little bit of light on what it looks like, and maybe some scenarios that a CIO has encountered along the way. And we've invited in the CIO of SUNY System Administration, Mr. Brian Digman. So welcome, Brian.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us. And I let them know that you'd be our guest speaker today. And you've got a couple of questions that I'll be posing to you. But before I hop into the question segment, do you mind sharing a little bit about what your role includes at System, and also just a sort of summary of how you found yourself in this role, like how your journey to leadership?
Sure. Let's see, I've been with the state now about 38 years. So I've been in state service for a long time. I actually started as an application programmer years ago. And over the years, worked my way through the ranks, both on the application side and on the technical side. I had the opportunity to become an IT director at some point. And a few years ago, as the new IT agency was formed for the state, I was selected as the state CIO. And I helped form ITS. It was a significant challenge. Talk about managing conflict. Just about overnight, we inherited about 4,000 employees spread all over the state, servicing roughly 50 agencies. So from there, in a roundabout way, I landed here at SUNY and happy to be here. I've been here for about 5.5 years now. So at 100,000 feet, that's the journey.
Great. And so I do have some prepared questions. I've also let our participants, we've got our largest class of IT higher ed professionals this year. We have 24 participants. So all across SUNY and NYSERNet's membership as well. So some people outside of SUNY. But do you mind sharing with us, how do you prepare for those conversations about direct reports, their annual reviews? How do you, what's your approach to ongoing development conversations as well?
So for me, there's a couple things that I like to do, and over the years, it seems to work pretty well. The first thing is stay engaged. So I like to be able to judge for myself based on my interaction with people, how they're doing, which seems pretty obvious. But in addition to that, when it comes to evaluation time, I'll ask employees to fill out their view first. It's always interesting to see how they perceive the past year. And one of the elements that I'll ask them for is projecting into next year, not only program goals, but personal goals. What are their goals? What do they want to achieve? What do they want to achieve for the organization, obviously, but also for their professional growth? And working together with them, will develop a plan, which will be part of their evaluation process that we'll work together on throughout the year. So it's really not just a one-day event. It's literally done properly. It's literally throughout the year, working together on it.
Good. So the time they get to that performance review, that annual conversation that everyone can anticipate, it's not really a surprise. You know, if you have to get into something contentious or something that they might have a hard time receiving, it sounds like.
So I would say it shouldn't be a surprise. But, mileage varies. Every situation's a little bit different. Everybody has their own perspective on, how they performed, how the organization performed, situations as they came up. So it shouldn't be. The idea is to try to eliminate as much of the surprise as possible, and also course correct throughout the year. Trying to course correct before the last minute or have to address it during the evaluation whenever possible, trying to help people achieve their goals throughout.
Good. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Crucial Conversations, but the model that we showed them is all about staying in dialogue. And so it sounds like you're staying in dialogue, which is good. How might you as a CIO manage a scenario where you had two of your senior leaders that disagree? They're both brilliant, hardworking, but they're both a bit stubborn and they think they're right. So how can we get them to a resolution, or what are some things that you might do?
So this may seem a little bit unorthodox, but some conflict is healthy. And what I mean by that is in the right situation, a little bit of competition across the teams, a little bit of disagreement, healthy disagreement is okay. So I always try to encourage folks to speak their mind, not be afraid to raise their perspective. It's not just the vocal people you need to worry about. Sometimes it's the people that are quiet, and you sort of wonder what's going on there. When it becomes unhealthy conflict, I like to sit them both down. I like to try to air out whatever their concerns are. Sometimes it's, well, the factors, there's so many factors that go into it, but oftentimes it's something that can be aired out and addressed openly. I try to do it as transparently as possible. You always have to be careful if you're dealing with just one party or the other, that there becomes a little bit of, it almost makes the conflict a little worse at times, because then people become suspicious, like, uh-oh, you know, what's being said when I'm not there, etc. There are times that it becomes a personal conflict and you have no choice, but as a general rule, sitting parties down, you know, encouraging people to be open and honest with what their concerns are usually works.
Good. Thank you. How have you handled, you know, I know you've been at System, I think you said 5 years now, but a lot of our folks are aspiring to this CIO role. And so they'll be preparing for their first days in a new culture as the leader. So how did you handle the beginning days as a leader at a new institution? You could either share about System or another role that you've had, but you know, you're the new person walking into an established culture, and that is not always easy. So how does an outsider navigate while trying to learn, and they're expected to lead?
So for me, the first thing I try to do, and sometimes it's hard because as a CIO, it's a very reactive job at times. But the first thing I try to do is listen and learn. So try not to go in like a bull in the china shop, you know, that was hired to just square everything away. Even if that tends to be true, the best way to do, for me anyway, that what's worked the best is listen, you know, get to know people, get to know the situation, get to know the dynamics, the culture. And sometimes there's an undercurrent that's not obvious when you first arrive, and somehow the folks who interview you may have overlooked or just neglected to mention, oh yeah, by the way, these two groups hate each other. You know, so there's a little bit of time that needs to be spent on just listening, getting to know people. Now, as a CIO, that can be challenging because, you know, 2 days into the job, you could have a major cyber incident. Develop trust. Even if there is an incident, take the time to trust in your team, promote the team. And if there's a particular direction that you're looking to move in, for example, I like to see IT organization become the innovation center. I think that's really important. The type of people that that tend to gravitate towards IT do well in an innovation set, in an innovative or innovation type setting. But day one is not the day to lay out that agenda. It's really about starting, listening, getting to know the organization, and letting them get to know you. You know, whenever there's a new boss, folks are always kind of curious, you know, what's his or her style? You know, what should I expect from them? There are times, especially as the CIO, where you might have to do things like change schedules. Those, you know, that affects people's lives, and, you know, very difficult things to do. Also, take the time to listen, get to know them, and let them get to know you.
Good advice. Thank you. If one of our participants was promoted and then in a situation where their colleagues become their direct reports, how would you advise them to deal with that, come to terms with it?
So in IT in particular, one of the most challenging things to do is that situation where you were, say, a programmer, you were, IT, working technical services, maybe cyber and hands-on, and then you're promoted and you're responsible for that unit. It's very hard for people to let go what they used to do. So the first piece of advice I give people is when you promote into your new job, even though you know the old job very well, you have to actually begin performing the new job. Interestingly, that's typically easier for people that promote out of an organization. So when you arrive, you just don't know enough about the incoming organization. Within tech, it's difficult because we all have our technical skills. And, even me, I'm a frustrated programmer at times. I'll be like, no, I want to get my hands on it. I want to see the code. And folks are like, you haven't coded in a while. So how about we handle that? It's really, all joking aside, it's really important for a person when they take on a new role to actually take the role on. And that means letting go a bit of the old role. Now, it doesn't mean you forget the old role, because what you do bring to the table is that you can start to mentor people in that role, even early on, because you've been there, you've done that. Also, don't forget where you were. And what I mean by that is, don't forget what it's like to get called at 2 o'clock in the morning and have to come in and have to deal with problems. Don't suddenly become the person that, oh yeah, I don't do that anymore. But if something didn't go perfectly the way I would have done it, or at the timing I would have done it, as a supervisor, and this becomes increasingly important, it's trusting your people, helping them, achieve the mission of the organization and their personal goals. That begins on day one as you become a supervisor.
Good. Well, I've reminded our participants that we would love to hear from them. And so I put in the chat asking for questions to be submitted. They could either do that by chat, or if anyone wants to raise their Zoom hand and we can unmute you, you can interact with Brian.
Do I get to ask people questions if I happen to know them?
You do. You can ask them questions even if you don't know
Grace
them.
immediately panicked.
She's ready for it.
I think John's on
Go
there.
ahead, shoot. Go ahead, shoot.
Well, there's Harry. There's another one I could pick on.
Oh, Harry's got his hand up. He's a
He's going to take a preemptive
willing
strike.
participant here.
Yeah. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Harry.
So you talked about the situation when you became CIO, when you get promoted to that position, to let go or try to let go of your previous responsibilities. Speaking as a fellow system admin employee, where there might be challenges with resources, one of the challenges that I have, which I would love to get your perspective, is trying to put the person that is in your previous position on the best path for success, where you don't want to necessarily just give them all of the work that you had been doing, because in that situation, it's probably more than one person, especially a new person coming into a position, can handle. So how do you juggle that in the most productive way?
Well, among the first things to do with a new person, especially if one's being hired as one's being advanced, or maybe one got advanced and the hiring came a little after, is set expectations early. And that gets back to the performance review as well, right? So you right up front, you would sit with the employee and say, okay, here's what I'm expecting. Here's what we're expected to do as a unit. If it's just one-on-one, if there's only the two of you, then that's it. If there's a team, then it's a matter of involving the other team members as well, that might have similar skills that can help pick up some of the slack as the person is onboarding and coming up to speed. Training is critically important, something that in IT is often neglected, or one of the first things that gets scratched off the budget. Having a training plan for that person is important. trying always to resist the temptation to say, oh, I'll just do it myself because it's faster. Like I can just knock this out in 5 minutes, as opposed to spending 20 or 30 minutes with the person in question or the new employee or your staff. I can tell you that spending that time is the most valuable time that you'll spend, and it pays dividends multiple times over in time. Again, you're also as you climb the ranks in that new role, you have a boss that's going to have similar expectations of you, and your measures are going to change. So they're going to expect you to behave more like a supervisor and less like your previous job. And that amplifies as you go further up the ranks. So you have to pick up more budgetary skills. You have to, understand the politics of an organization better. You have to reconcile differences. You have to do the performance plans, et cetera, all the things that come with moving up the ranks in IT. Now, sometimes there is no choice. You're getting hammered by an outage or et cetera. And in those occasions, there's nothing wrong with rolling up your sleeves, and jumping in. But remember, you don't want to displace the person whose primary responsibility it is. So even if you're going to kind of roll up your sleeves and jump in, you want to be careful not to overshadow the person who's supposed to do it every day or diminish their role in it. And again, that can be tricky because when you're getting a call from the front office asking, where are we, and we're getting killed out here, that's tough to do. But that investment in time is important. And also, don't be afraid to hold people accountable. So you set those expectations up front. You don't have to be nasty about it, but you can be consistent about holding folks accountable and making sure they understand your expectations. And when they miss, having a conversation about what we can do to make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
Good.
Thanks.
Grace.
I got one. Thought of one. How do you deal with conflict when there is a very apparent lack of accountability on both sides?
So accountability for, and do you mean unit performance?
Accountability as to, I guess, accountability when responsibility lacks or when something falls through the cracks. There's no accountability for that one side to reference, I guess you could say, so that there's no real conflict in between the two parties. But when something goes awry, there's no accountability. So how do you overcome that sort of situation?
One of the principles I try to work by, and I encourage all my folks to work by as well, is worry about our delivery first and foremost. Worry about your own performance, worry about your unit's performance first and foremost. Now, if the accountability conflict or problem is within the unit, then that's up to the supervisor to step in and help address and correct. But I think, Grace, you might be alluding to, well, it's outside of IT or the pillar. If that's the case, again, I would come back to control what's in your control first and foremost. So perform at 100%. The temptation can be, well, we're performing, we're going above and beyond, we're performing everything we need to do at 100%, but our other, we're dependent on another, maybe a program unit, maybe another agency, maybe a campus, whatever it is, and they're not performing. Well, that's not our concern in terms of our performance expectations. We're expecting our what we can control to be as close to perfect as we can keep it. And where it gets even more frustrating is sometimes for the greater good, and this happens to IT a lot, we have to pick up some of that slack from the other unit. And there I would encourage folks to remember at the end of the day, what's our greater mission? What's our greater goal? Well, in our case, it's serving the students of SUNY. It's serving the faculty, the administrators, et cetera. So there are times that we have to pick up a little bit. The other units have to pick up a little bit if we have issues. But first and foremost, making sure that we're doing everything we can within our pillar, within what's in our control. There are techniques you can use too, though, when the others aren't performing, which I can talk about if folks are interested. But first and foremost, make sure that we're doing everything we can. Doing our
I saw
part.
some heads nodding. We would love to hear a little more.
So that gets a little trickier because now you're getting into peers, and this is as a CIO, this is almost like a daily event where the technology. It seems, especially lately, anybody that could buy a personal computer becomes an IT expert. And next thing you know, we're getting kind of expert advice from all over the place, or golly, you should have been able to do this faster or do that faster. So to me, that's an invitation for conversation. And I think, again, sticking to the principles of what are we trying to achieve helps us open up that conversation and helps us be confident and positive in what we're doing. When a unit is underperforming, or at least in our perception, is either underperforming or not carrying, and I use the word our perception because sometimes we perceive it to be that, but we can't always see what else they're responsible for. So there might be a higher priority that came up in their world. We have to be careful not just to become negative or suspicious about, hey, they didn't meet their deadline. Like, why did we have to meet ours? I think the better way to do that is, well, we're going to meet ours. Let's go open a conversation with them and see if we can help them meet theirs. That builds a long-term relationship that goes a long way. If that doesn't work, then we start to open a conversation up with the supervisor here, or in my case, I would open up, executive conversation with some of my peers. It's true for every single level down from top to bottom. That normally works. If it doesn't work, the last resort is to escalate it. But again, if we are going to escalate, it's very helpful for, as a CIO, to be able to go in and say, this is what we did, this is how we're performing. We're not here to cast doubt or to somehow disrespect the other units. What we're here to do is accomplish the mission that you gave us. And these are the things that we noticed are missing. And here's what we're trying to do to fix them. That usually brings it to, to conclusion.
Good question. Thank you. You handled that on your feet very well. Any other questions from the group? We've got some time left with Brian. If there are conflicts maybe you find yourself avoiding, you want to figure out a strategy to address it, we can certainly learn from this experience. Ryan.
I suspect you deal with this a lot, but I believe a big portion of your job is making a bunch of other CIOs who you do not supervise and cannot control agree with you. How do you make other senior leadership drink the Kool-Aid?
So do you mean program CIOs or both?
So more practically for most of us, I believe it'd be like other, the CFO or, sort of deans around the campus, not necessarily CIO specifically, but, high level decision-making individuals who you can't tell what to do. You can just encourage them to believe your idea is a good one.
So there's a few thoughts that come to mind in that realm. First, be confident in what you're doing, and it gets back to that performance level. If IT can be viewed a couple of different ways. Actually, I guess there's a few ways, but I'll focus on a couple. One would be a cost center. So if you view it as a cost center, and what I mean by that is, okay, IT is just sort of something that we have to do. You know, it's, you know, we need a website. We need to be able to print bills. We need to be able to do these things. That's all true. But that is, if folks like the CFO, the operating directors, the provosts, et cetera, are viewing IT that way, then I submit there's something missing in the IT presentation and what we're doing. What I like to do is demonstrate through performance and innovation that IT is not a cost center. We are an innovation engine. We are the place you come to for results and for opinions, advice, to get the job done. When you tailor the conversation that way, and it takes a while to do that, especially if you get hired into an organization where it's just, yeah, we have to do this IT thing, and good golly, every time we talk to them, you know, there's another few dollars we have to spend, or they want us to buy this cyber package. I don't even know what we're protecting. You know, it takes a lot of setup time to make sure that people understand what we do, that we're the best at what we do. And by the way, if you work with us, we can bring value to your organization that is X number of times the investment. That takes a lot of face time, and it takes a lot of confidence in what we do. And that confidence is, this is going to sound a little funny, but it's infectious. So as we start to meet with the CFO, with you know, with the leaders in the organization, next thing you know, they start to understand, oh, hold on a second. If I sprinkle a little bit of automation on this thing I'm trying to get done, or this process that I've struggled with, or my budget got cut, how do I deal with that? Well, you deal with that through automation. And we bring a wide variety of automation, especially with AI advancing the way it is. So I mentioned that because a lot of it takes setup time, and it takes time to build that trust relationship for them to understand, be it a peer organization, et cetera, the value that's brought to the table. That makes the conversation much, much easier. If for some reason something comes up and we can't get into that position, then it becomes a matter of let the data drive the conversation. And what I mean by that is be prepared. So if you're going into a conversation that might be a tense one, maybe an organization that you can't quite control, do your homework, be thorough, be factual, and don't let emotion enter the conversation. So let's say that you've been working on, you know, the investment center idea, you're making some progress, but something just happened, or money needs to be spent that folks don't agree with, or you have an IT organization that you can't quite convince. If you think you're right, it's not enough to think you're right. You have to be right. And you have to actually prove that you're right. I've been in situations, for what it's worth, where in order to prove that I'm right, I'll bring a 3-inch binder full of information with me, and I'll lay it on the table right at the beginning of the conversation. And then we'll go through the material. Now, the other half of that is, don't be afraid to be wrong. There are situations where you go in, you're convinced you're right, and you're not listening. So you're driving, and all that's doing is driving a wedge, because you might not be aware of all the facts. So go in, be prepared, do your homework, sit down, be ready, but also listen. Make sure you're listening. What you don't want to do is be in that situation and have someone that is equally or more prepared, and you're not listening and you get run over. That hurts. So I hope that addresses your question. There's a few angles that you can use to approach those situations.
That was very helpful. Although I suspect you could, it's 40 years of knowledge that is the actual answer to that.
It does take a little bit of you know, experience, kind of hit and miss, but those basic principles are what I try to use, and I found them to be very effective over the years, even in really tense, high pressure type situations. It's not always about, it's not necessarily about being right. It's about getting it right for the organization that matters. And when you use the facts to get there, You do everything you can to have a strong reputation for the organization going in, results tend to be much better. And I'll tell you, I've been in situations where I've had my binder, I've sat at the table, the other person presents their material, and I've had to say, oh, hold it. Okay, I didn't quite see it that way. And then you kind of blend it, you know, a ultimate resolution together.
Good.
Thank you.
What other questions do you have for Brian? Christy's got one.
I have one. I think that we've all faced seasons in our lives where personal stuff kind of impedes our work, and I feel like the pandemic has, you know, spotlighted some of that even more. And I just was curious because a lot of times folks are, you know, in a department with specific roles that nobody else shares. And how do you manage when somebody's going through, you know, life, but they're not getting their actual job done to the extent of what you're used to them getting their job done? So the level that you're used to them performing.
Oh, those situations are really tough. First, the work-life balance is critical to the long-term health of an organization and the employees. And that's going to mean that there will be times that there's a personal situation that affects people's ability to meet their work goals, you know, to perform at the level they're accustomed to working. So it's important that we find ways to, you know, to address that. I usually like to have a conversation with the person if I can. Sometimes whatever is affecting them, even if it's a personal matter, you know, some employees will be very forthcoming and grateful that you took the time to sit down and hear them out and try to work around whatever concern it is. Sometimes it's flexing the schedule. Sometimes it's just understanding that, you know, instead of reporting at 8 o'clock, you know, if they can report at 9:30, being a little flexible gets to it. Other times the issues are much deeper than that and something that we can't necessarily solve, but we can help get them to the assistance they need. And that could be, you know, for a number of reasons. It could be a domestic abuse type situation. It could be, you know, a drug or alcohol related issue. It could be a sick parent. You know, the list goes on and on. Our goal here is to be supportive. We want to help them through whatever personal matter they have. And in the long run, that makes for a healthier organization. That's the good news. But to your point, in the short run, wow, it can really sting. So to the degree possible, always keeping succession planning in mind is, you know, is really important. It's not only important in case somebody wins the lottery or decides to retire or whatever, but for these situations where, okay, someone's not going to be around for a few weeks, a few days, or they'll be around, but they're going to perform at, you know, 75% of what they normally do. Trying to spread that load out is easier if you've thought ahead of, you know, and maybe made some contingencies. So instead of having only one person who can do particular work, try to cross-pollinate wherever you can and have other people that maybe don't do it every day, but are generally familiar with that technology and could step in if they have to. Sometimes that's not practical. You know, there's just not enough people. Another technique that can work is having contracts available, support contracts where you can to bring in resources on a temporary basis to help. That's another way. Still another that I've seen that's worked for us in the past has been have like organizations. So that might have similar skills, see if you can work arrangements where if there is a catastrophic type problem or a problem that's really preventing performance at a critical time, are there resources that could be loaned in? In SUNY, that might mean something like a relationship with an ITech or a CCIS, maybe as a backup where particular skills could be brought in and brought up quickly. So it's about being creative. And I know in these budgetary times, all of those options can be tough to achieve. So it's really about thinking through in advance and trying to situate the organization as best you can for success. What you don't want to do too is if you don't try to provide some sort of shared load or spreading the load a little bit, it exacerbates the pressure on the person, because the overwhelming majority of the people who work here, and I've noticed this in public service over the years, they want to do a great job. They want to come in and they really want to crush it. And they know when their performance is a little off, and that actually makes the problem worse. So being able to go to them and say, look, don't sweat it. Take care of whatever your issue is. Here are some resources that SUNY has available that could help you. And in the meantime, Brian hasn't coded in 38 years, but what the heck, we're going to throw him in. He's going to do some coding today. I don't want you to worry about it.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brian. This was our first time interacting, and I'm so glad that I had this opportunity to get to know you better and your approach to handling some of these challenges here at SUNY. And, I know our audience thanks you as well for sharing all of this and being open to our growth.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. And if there's anything I can do to support in the future, please don't hesitate. As you can tell, it's not a perfect science. So,
No.
Every situation is a little bit different. So thank you again.
Thank you. All right, we'll give them our Zoom round of applause here with our reaction. And thank you, everyone, for contributing to the conversation and sharing your questions. The next segment that we have planned on our agenda is to get you into your mentor-led small group discussions. So Christy, I know, is going to help us with the technology with that, so she may need a minute to get them set up. But we are going to remind you what your charge is to think about and discuss. Talk about your own style under stress. How do you typically respond? You've likely advanced from your childhood. How did you handle conflict? So what is it like now? And have you increased your comfort with these crucial conversations? Sort of where are you with your confidence in getting into them? Try to think about where you're stuck. What's a conversation that you'd like to focus on? You've got this relationship built up with your mentor and your fellow proteges. So we're hoping that you can have some honest dialogue about that and talk about what's holding you back from having a crucial conversation. If it's that you need more skills, you can get them through SUNY or the Crucial Conversations book or working with your network here. But we're going to give you until 3:45. Actually, we're a little ahead of the game here, so we'll say 3:40. We'll come back together as a large group and have some. We have another activity for you to do with case studies. So just look into my breakout room here to see if we are.
Yep, we are set. I just want to give a heads up to Kitty and Matthew. You are the only ones here for that group. So if you need to switch to a different group, Matthew, I see Kitty's on now. Just let me know. We can do that.
I am on now. So Matthew, do you want to join another group or just talk? We can talk to each other. Which way? Up to you.
We'll talk to each other.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms, everybody.
Everyone does that. I'm muted. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed your conversations. And we have made it to the final segment of today's growth session, which is putting you in charge of a case study in your group again. So we're going to put you back in those rooms with your mentor. Christy, will this work with our 6 cases, or do we need to consolidate some groups?
I think it will still work as long as Denise's group is okay riding without.
I can stay. I can stay. I got my stuff done that I needed to.
Okay, great.
Oh, awesome.
Great. So
Okay.
yeah, it should work if you can share the Google link. I don't have that.
All right, so I'm going to put in the chat a link to a Google slideshow. And the first slide, you'll see which case your group has been assigned. And you could just click the link, go right into that slide. You'll assign a scribe and a spokesperson. So you'll read your scenario, have some discussion, and then we will come back together to discuss. So let's give them 15 minutes.
All right. And there's one slide per mentor, and they're labeled, right, Carolyn?
Yeah. They are.
All right, folks. Have fun solving your case studies.
Well,
I have to just add, this is Kitty. I have to add, for our little group of just Matthew and me, we did spend some of our time talking about his presentation for next week. So we only used part of this time for the use case.
Okay. Okay. Since you were case study 1, would you like to just share a little bit? I can read the scenario.
Matthew's going to do that.
I got it.
Oh,
I
great.
don't have the scenario in front of me, but basically this was a case of quiet quitting, where someone didn't get the raise that they wanted to get, and so now they're doing less and less work. And so how do you kind of react to it? So as the manager, I think first and me and Kate talked about this, I would try to figure out what type of, where they were coming from, whether they understood the whether they understood the impact to the client or whoever we're working for, and whether they understood it was actually happening or not. And then based on that, and this is where my part comes in, I would try to figure out, hopefully I would have known already, whether they were the type of employee which was like the career oriented, like I want to be better employee, versus the employee who's just like, I'm here for a job, you got me from 9 to 5, and then I'm out. If it was the career oriented one, then I would kind of speak to them in the manner of like, hey, we want to do all these things for our client and become better, and improve the society, improve the department, and we need to have these deliverables, and speak to them that way. If it was kind of like the, I'm here until 65 years old and leave me alone, then we would talk about expected deliverables during a certain time period and whether that was realistic or not, and we would add to that, if there's any barriers that I could help kind of take out of the way, because as a manager in this scenario, that's part of to remove barriers to success. Maybe they have something going on at home, or maybe I don't know, maybe they don't have the training, or they had some questions. So you try to figure out what those were to empower them to get the job done. So
Yeah.
that was what our.
Great. And if anyone wants to read the case, the Google Doc is open, so you can click into any of these case studies. But thank you, Matthew. And we are going to move to case scenario number 2. I'm not sure who the spokesperson is for this group, but I see lots of notes taken. So thank you to the scribe.
So that'll be me. Our use case was we're the CIO, and we recently hired a deputy CIO. He's about a month into the position, and he's just not really doing as well as we'd like him to be doing. He's delegating things more than we think he should be, and He's often even reassigning his work to other team members, which causes additional stress and confusion. So we're a little concerned he may have lied on his resume and he's not quite as good as he should be. And the question is, what should we be doing? So our first thought as a team is that we kind of already failed Tom. We should have been meeting with him more before this point. We should have had better onboarding, all those fun things. It's a little irrelevant to the question, but we would schedule an in-person meeting and bring Tom in. We'd ask Tom how he thinks things are going. We would discuss the role that he was there to fill, hopefully give him his performance program that we've agreed on well prior to this point, and go for the items to see what's going on exactly, find out what he feels his role and responsibilities are and how they align with that program, clarify where we need to. We gave you this task, we expected you to do this, not for someone else to do it. Is there a reason that you weren't able to do this yourself? How can we address this going forward? We'd give specific examples. Bob said you gave this job to him. Why do you think Bob was a better fit for that than you were? Is there a way that maybe we can prepare you better to do this in the future? We'd make sure he's, building good relationships with his coworkers and employees under him. And we would reinforce that we're always available for him to come and talk and give guidance, make sure he knows we're there to help and we're not trying to just give himself and go with it. And obviously open that line of communication. We want this to be a reoccurring thing where he can come to us and we address his performance at any given time, and how we feel it's going, how he feels it's going, and where we can meet in the middle to improve on things. The other issue is actually fixing this in the first place. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have gotten this far without something being addressed. So we would also schedule recurring meetings, make sure that we're, set up a mentor-like environment so that we can work with him and instill the culture and the vibe of the organization and develop a trust so he feels like he's got the support. But then we would readdress our onboarding process for the future to make sure that this doesn't happen. We need to make sure that our expectations are clear, that he understands exactly what his goal is and what the job is and how we can help meet, and make sure that in the future we can invest the time and the energy into it, because hiring someone and getting him trained up to speed is a huge effort of time and energy. So we want to make sure we do it right and not just waste everyone's time.
Good. Well done, group. Anything else the rest of the group wants to add? No? You did a great
Brian,
job.
you did a great summary.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. So group number 3, case scenario 3, looks like we had Larry taking great notes. And Larry to recap. So hello, Larry.
Well, we didn't actually pick a spokesperson, but I figured since I took the notes, maybe I should do it. If that's okay. Simeon, is that okay?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So our scenario basically is we have a department that's gone remote work, and a member of the team is starting to be late in responses, is sending emails that are being perceived as harsh, serious, too strong. And then they're also getting quieter at the same time, right? And not being receptive when we're reaching out to them. So the question is, what should the CIO do in response? So the idea was, first of all, since emails are not working out very well, right, to reach out to the person for a one-on-one Zoom or even an in-person meeting and try to establish what is happening, right? To sit down with them in a non-confrontational way and try to elicit the information and to talk to them and to see see if we can get to what's behind these behaviors. But you have to be very careful, right? Because you can't pry too much. But hopefully the conversation would open up to, is the problem you're not adjusting to remote, to the email situation, or you're not liking the work? Again, you don't want to pry if there's a personal situation, but maybe if you're talking about the behaviors and just what's going on, that will come out, right? So again, you have to focus on those behaviors. You can't play the role of a social worker. They have a right to privacy, but you want to let them know, right, that you see these issues, and for the good of the team, you have to address them. And then you can see that summary bullet where it's really trying to address the problem in a positive way, focused on the behaviors for the good of the team, showing that you're concerned about and you care about their well-being in the process. If the conversation lends itself to the point where they have shown some of the underlying issues, perhaps, you could even point them to where there could be help, which is EAP, for example. But basically, at the end of the day, you're trying to listen, to respond appropriately. You don't want to speculate, and you want to focus on, what would be called a contingency management approach.
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. Any response from the group or anything from the rest of the group that you want to add in? They think you did a wonderful job, Larry. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to case scenario 4, and we have Rob as our spokesperson.
Yeah, so our case study was that a supervisor voiced frustration about hybrid work, and employees had left for full remote opportunities. So the supervisor is in stress and gives out insults to individuals, and he increases the workload and shortens deadlines, basically worsening the whole problem. And so the question is, what should the CIO do in response? So we assume the CIO is not the supervisor, and the supervisor reports to the CIO. That's our assumption for the answer. And then, so the first thing that we thought, the CIO should not directly intervene, but should actually coach the supervisor to kind of hopefully resolve the situation. And this is all nicely organized because we tried out ChatGPT and Copilot and those things and see what the answers are, and it's actually quite amazing what came out. So the morale and engagement is one aspect of this whole thing. In particular, I think it's focusing on productivity and well-being of the whole team. We discussed also how to mediate conflict and improve the communication of the team. So the tricky thing there is that, you know, again, the interaction with the individuals versus the supervisor. So how do you kind of smooth that out, right? It should be addressed relatively quickly so it doesn't fester too long, right? And then potentially we should reassess the workload and the deadlines of the overall work, so that you know, we're not crunching people into kind of working super hard and actually basically being setting up for failure, right? So, and then maybe there would also be the remote work policies should be reassessed, because it seems to be an issue between fully remote and hybrid work, right? So maybe there's something that could be resolved where people, maybe they would be just happier to be fully remote. Maybe that is an option if handled properly, right? So that might be a thing that should have reassessed. So that maybe as a short summary. But.
Excellent. Any comments, questions, things to add? All right, we are moving along here. So case scenario 5, we have John giving us the recap. Can you let us know what you worked on?
Yeah, so our scenario was basically a scenario where you have 2 employees who are having frequent disagreements within meetings and project discussions, which is resulting in some passive aggressive behavior that's being noticed by other members of the team, and it's affecting the overall team performance. The issue has not been dealt with by their direct manager and has been escalated to the CIO and HR. And the question was, what should the CIO do? Our question was, or our kind of responses were, that the CIO and HR should meet with the manager first to assess why they haven't dealt with the situation directly. Is it a kind of a training or professional development tools that they may need that they're missing to help sort that out? There should be some coaching during the meeting to have the manager meet individually with each staff that's actually having the issue to get their story, to figure out kind of what we talked about earlier. What's the actual story background that could be causing this conflict? Once the disagreement is figured out, maybe we implement some sort of something in their performance plan or a performance dialogue for each staff to kind of notate or within the meetings, what specific expectations and professional, expectations and meeting expectations that the group is going to have, so that everybody's on the same page. And ultimately, the CIO should meet with the manager again to get their perspective on the conflict to see what they can be done, and hopefully that this doesn't reoccur in the future, so it could be handled earlier before being escalated to, the C level or HR.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Any questions from the group? Concerns or comments? All right, Zoom round of applause for group 5. Thank you, John. Last but not least, case scenario 6, we have Grace as our spokesperson.
Surprise, I'm speaking again. No, I'm kidding. Our case study was the following. I'll read it. The IT team has been facing challenges in maintaining agility due to scheduling conflicts among team members. Critical decisions and next steps often require input and consensus from the entire team. However, with team members working on multiple projects simultaneously and having different personal commitments, it's become increasingly difficult to gather everyone together for important discussions and planning sessions. What should the CIO do in response? Well, our initial conversations were obviously around the actual question of what should the CIO do. We were thinking maybe require an in-person meeting policy for, the bigger, more important critical meetings for decision-making purposes. Also, an idea was that we have project minutes during either virtual or in-person conversations, and prior to the meeting, for the project minutes, a person can go on to the project minutes and update on the project minute document to say, oh, well, this is completed in production, or no need to have a conversation about this, or say, this is something we really need to address in the meeting, and approach it from that perspective. One afterthought that I had was that if there's a supervisor in the mix, because it didn't really say that there was in the case study, but if there's a supervisor in the mix, you would want to, as a CIO, work with that supervisor of the team and see what their take on it is, because they're going to know the team better than you are as a CIO, and see what their opinion is on how to best address the sort of situation that they're in right now. But we kind of took it from a CIO perspective, where maybe the supervisor has already come to the CIO and said, hey, what can I do? So we kind of threw around those ideas.
Good. Well, Christy and I had a good time writing these case scenarios. And so we pulled out all of our resources and problems that have come across our desk recently. So thank you for giving us good ideas and interesting responses, and ways to think about these very real challenges that we all face. So thank you to everyone. And before we call today to a close, we have our first applied learning project presentation. So welcome to Ethan. He is ready to present his 10 minutes. He's got your attention for 10 minutes, and we will have a survey for you all to give him some feedback too. So this is just your first one. You'll be doing lots of this next week in the group setting. But Christy, I think we've got our link to the Survey Monkey, right? So we can send that. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Are we good?
I think we are good. So I'm going to set my timer here, Ethan, and the floor is yours.
It's a lot of pressure.
No pressure. You're in a supportive group.
I just need to move my notes or covered. So there we go. Okay. So can everyone see the screen okay? Did I share that right?
Perfect.
Good. Yes. Okay. All right. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you to my leadership at RPI for encouraging me to participate in this academy, to my mentor, Garrett, to the organizers and presenters, and mostly all of you, my peers, for your thoughtful and engaging participation in this program. I also really do want to apologize for not being able to make it next week due to personal circumstances, but I appreciate your willingness to allow me to offer this presentation here, and wish you all the best in your presentations next week. My presentation is called Digital Transformation at RPI, and the relationship to service management. So in order to explore this topic, we must first be on the same page about what I mean. So digital transformation, I see as a strategic initiative aimed at improving operational efficiencies through technology, whereas IT service management is about aligning IT services with business needs through people, process, and technology. So in comparison, the first, by virtue of its name and definition, takes place over a specific period of time and is aimed at getting from point A to point B, whereas the latter is geared at ensuring services are both designed initially and continue to meet the needs of our clients. It's ongoing. So a little bit about RPI. Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute is the oldest continual operating technological university in the United States. Our Hillside campus in Troy, New York overlooks downtown Troy and the Hudson River. We have around 8,000 students overall, about 6,000 of which are undergraduate. This year, we're celebrating our bicentennial. And from the beginning, we've been innovating with our initial focus on applying science to the common purposes of life. Our graduates have used their education here to go on to do many things which have undoubtedly impacted all of our lives, from the visionary for the Transcontinental Railroad, to the father of the microprocessor, to the designer of the first graphics processor for the PC. It's clear that innovation is in our hearts and at the core of our culture. Of course, this picture at the bottom is the new IBM Quantum System 1, the first ever installed on a university campus, for which we just had the ribbon cutting about a month ago. So the project, about 2 years ago, RPI got our first new president in over 20 years, Marty Schmidt, an alum who has brought about new energy and perspective. This has, as is usual, caused for some other leadership turnover, as well as brought about new areas of focus for the Institute with a new strategic plan underway. Some of these changes have spurred new questions about the organization and function of various campus services, IT services and applications included, and piqued interest in the potential for some more dramatic changes impacting IT services under the auspices of digital transformation. We, of course, have some existing processes within our IT organization aimed at aligning our services with business needs. Are these designed to address dramatic change? Might adjustments to processes result in closer alignment, making significant change avoidable? How might we approach the potential for significant change? So specifically, I developed a hypothesis by which to sort of guide this project, and that was that through an appropriate mix of people, process, and technology, IT services and business processes should be continually evolving and responsive, and that an organization should not be faced with the prospect of a digital transformation type initiative, as there should be no or minimal room for a disconnection or gap to develop. So through the project, I'll learn more about current IT service management practices in use at RPI, understand historic barriers to realizing full potential, to identify things that we're doing well as opportunities for improvement. And lastly, I hope to learn enough to conclude whether large initiatives like digital transformation are preventable, not because we disagree with them on premise, but rather that that we must get to this point. And if so, how would we do that? So how do I approach the project? So first, my plan is to meet with senior leadership and discuss the current situation to obtain, their buy-in for the project. Then I'll develop and execute a plan. Next, I'll explore and analyze the information I receive, identify opportunities, and hopefully, write it up into a white paper, which I potentially may present in the form of a presentation to senior leadership. So digging a little deeper. As I said, meeting with senior leadership, that'll include the CIO and AVP. We'll discuss and understand current climate, macro issues at play, gain insight into various current initiatives across the Institute that may be underway, share my ideas for the project, receive their guidance and perspective, and again, ultimately, hopefully their buy-in. Next, I'll develop and execute the plan. My goal will be to gather as diverse and holistic a perspective from across our IT organization as is possible. I'll design questions and the structure to evoke conversation and break down barriers. And I believe that will really help with engagement, toward moving forward with those opportunities as they arise. And I'll allow for plenty of time to go wherever the conversation takes us. Next, I'll explore what I heard, looking for increased understanding of practices, again, barriers to full success, common threads of opportunity and ways our practices might be tweaked for to better position the Institute for continued success. Lastly, again, I'll write those up and hope to try to address those questions, including, whether we might be able to avoid large scale initiatives, right? So here's where I use a little bit of RPI innovation, and we'll just fast forward a couple months. So in full transparency, of course, I started this project a couple months ago, and I'm in sort of the final stages at this point. So at this point in time, I've completed the discussions. I've conducted some analysis, and I'm in the final stages of attempting to compile this into white paper. I honestly was surprised by the consistency that many seem to have very similar thoughts on those gaps and opportunities that I mentioned. And I see this as a really good sign that we might have some easy wins. It seems clear that we have a really great staff who support great services that seem to meet client needs very well overall. There are some challenges with how the engagement happens, both for us with our clients, but also for our clients with us. I believe this potentially impacts our service alignment, but also the success or full potential of their operations. The documentation and communication of processes is a clear opportunity to increase awareness all around. And there's certainly some opportunity, again, for us to tweak our processes to make them more effective. So outcomes and looking forward, beyond simply augmenting, formalizing, and standardizing our processes to improve outcomes, we must look for opportunities for greater engagement at all levels. Perhaps due to my bias, and I tend to think about IT service management as being IT-led, right? I mean, it seems very, very logical. But I kind of sort of question, is that perspective leaving something on the table? Perhaps could a unified, and what I mean by that is non-IT centric, non-IT driven process break down barriers? Could it engage and help enable full success? As an IT organization, similarly, our focus is often on our people, meaning IT, our processes, meaning our IT processes, and our technologies that we support. However, our clients hold unique knowledge and insights about their people and processes, and those sometimes seem disconnected from ours. I think we must determine how to fully engage clients into one process that is neither IT nor client focused, but rather designed to improve overall organizational capabilities. And I think if we can figure out how to do that, I do believe we can ensure shared vision and close ongoing alignment, resulting in maximized sustained capabilities. So what did I learn in this project? Understand the situation, including the local and macro issues at play. You don't want to be blindsided. Understanding the team in context of your project, right? So, normally I think of my team as my direct reports or maybe my peers, but in this case, I would define team differently, right? Understanding myself, what value can I bring based on my abilities, my position, my perspective. I think good working relationships, really have been useful and really, paid off in this endeavor. Having a clear objective in mind, a game plan. I need to be able to articulate the project and goals to stakeholders. Thanks to Frank, who's, of course, on this. He was my guinea pig. I met with him first, and I had a little trouble spelling out what I was trying to accomplish initially. So his feedback really helped me set that up for others. Communication is key. In-person meetings worked really well to set a cooperative tone and lower those walls. It's difficult for me, so I really focused on being a good listener. Accentuate the positives. This came up previously, highlighting what's working well and expand on those. And after hearing today's presentation and discussions, a lot of crucial conversations, right? So really, really important. So that's pretty much it. So I think I'm pretty much right at the 10-minute mark. So I want to thank you again. And if anyone has any questions, I'm glad to try to answer those.
Excellent. You must have practiced that because it was exactly 10 minutes. I hope I didn't distract you with my annotation. That won't happen at the live session.
Oh, oops, not new share. How do I get out of this? Stop share. There we go. Back to it. No, it popped up. It was like out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, what is that? 1 minute remaining. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ethan?
No.
No?
Well, I'm happy to address questions that come up after the fact. Again, I apologize for not being there next week, but if anything comes up, you can always reach out. I'm happy to hear from any of you about this or anything else, so.
No, thank you. And thanks. I actually had a chance to go to RPI's campus when they did the ribbon cutting for the quantum computer. So thank you, Ethan, for being such a gracious host that day. It was an awesome event. I will really remember that. So everyone has a link to the Survey Monkey. Please be sure to give Ethan your feedback, answer just a few, 5-star rating questions to give him some live feedback about how he did. And,
only 5 stars, though. Only 5 stars.
And there's a comment box as well. So, if you see any areas for him to improve, this is the sort of thing we want. We want honesty and supportive feedback to be able to do this, in cabinet meetings and all other presentations. So thank you for your time to give him that feedback. We will make sure we share that with Ethan. We are setting our compass ahead to next week, May 9th. Traveling in, most of you are traveling in Wednesday night, and we will be all set with our room block at the Best Western downtown Syracuse. They've given us the state rate. You should have that pretty well set by now. Just a friendly reminder, because I'm a SUNY employee, so if you're a SUNY employee and you need your tax exempt form, bring that. And we will see you in the morning. We'll have coffee ready at 9 o'clock. We will officially begin at 9:30. We'll have lunch catered, so we'll have some delicious food to be able to eat together. Thanks for letting us know what your dietary concerns might be. And thank you to Christy for coordinating all of this in her hometown. We will celebrate you. We will look forward to bringing this experience to a close with a graduation celebration. And you'll also have another chance to look back at what you wanted to accomplish at the beginning of this experience and see how far you've come, where you still want to focus your energy to develop yourself as a leader. And we just thank our mentors for being here all along the way. We really appreciate all the time you put into this program, and we look forward to spending the day with most of you next week.
Yeah, I just wanted to also make mention that we will have an email out to you that will contain, of course, the agenda, but also parking instructions. And I just want to make a verbal note here. The parking is in the atrium garage. When you enter, you have to swipe a credit card. That's not what will be used for payment, though, because we will provide stickers with barcodes that you can scan on your way out that will pay for the parking. So there'll be no parking charge to you. However, the garage changed its ticketing system, and now they use that card you come in with to also get you out. So you'll have to swipe it coming in to get through the gate, and then going out to get through the gate, and you'll have a tag that will pay for the parking. So I found that out yesterday. I was unprepared to use my credit card on the way in. That is not how they ever did it before. They gave you a ticket. So I'm glad I had that experience before you all came in and were like, they didn't give me a ticket. So
yeah, no, thank you. And if you're anything like me, I could get lost in a paper bag. Finding the garage was the hardest part of the day, but it's really not that hard.
I give you an address so you can put your GPS to that address. So hopefully you'll have an easy morning.
Thank you so much, everyone. You'll see a follow-up email soon with this recording and the agenda. So we've got that all set. It's alphabetical by last name. We have a lot of you. So, we will have to stick pretty close to the 10 minutes, but we look forward to looking at all the work that you've been doing behind the scenes here on your campuses. So good luck, and we wish you safe travels.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next week.
Have a wonderful
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.